Hello. I was just live a minute ago. It's a little obnoxious to be live twice in one day, I know. So I lied to you. That was not my only live. But today is September 11th. And I don't know how many of y'all know this, but I used to live in Washington, D.C., and I actually lived on the Hill in 2001. And I was at the Capitol on the day of September 11th, 2001. So I always worry that people will forget about what happened. And I feel like it's just not acknowledged like it was. And I want to make sure that that doesn't go away. You know, I want to make sure that people remember, because it was a very, very, very scary time. And so I was thinking about what can I do to help acknowledge this day. I was 22 years old. I was so little. I mean, I think about that, and my daughter is about to be 18, and she is so close to that. And I was on my own in Washington, D.C., and I'm sure my mother was terrified. I know my father was. A couple of weeks before 9/11, there had been a bombing at the zoo, and I didn't know. And my mother called me and was freaking out because she said, "There's a bomb up there. Anytime there's a bomb, you need to call me so I know you're not there." And at the time, I was like, "Why would I be at the zoo?" You know. But as a mother now, I get it, and I know that it has to be very unnerving to send the people you love the most in the world off, fly in the nest, and then have something like that happen. So when the morning of 9/11 happened, the minute I heard about something happening, at the time we thought it was at the State Department, I called my mother immediately, and she hadn't seen it because the Today Show was on a delay. And so she hadn't seen what all was happening. So I guess I kind of gave her the news as this was all happening. But what I decided to do today, and remember I was 22, one of my friends sent me the email I sent out to everyone. It's dated September 12th, 2001. And it's what I sent to everybody that sort of recounts the day of what sort of happened there. And there are more parts of it that come to mind as I'm reading it that I didn't necessarily put in here. And like I said, remember that this is written by a 22-year-old. But yeah, I thought I'd read it so that people could know what it felt like to be there and be there and really experiencing it. It was surreal and terrifying, and I still feel very disassociated from it, but I can still remember it all. Somebody's calling me. Decline. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm fine. Thank you so much for worrying. Fortunately for me, I have not lost any friends. I did have people that were supposed to be at the Pentagon that day and didn't go. Mama says she has had the whole town of Talladega calling in to check on me. I am lucky to have so many people concerned. People I barely know, and very special friends too. Kate, thanks for calling my mom and telling her Bethy was okay too. I tried to get through to her all day. DC has been pretty shaken up. After they bombed the Pentagon, I called Mama. Y'all know how she is, and she made me promise that I would call her if anything ever happened up here so she wouldn't have to worry about me, even if I'm not in the area. It was hard to call from the office because our phone stopped working for a while. Minutes after that, they reported a fire on the mall, and we all started to get worried. My legislative director said she was heading out, and so did the other staffers. The chief of staff told us not to leave, and that we were all overreacting. It was very typical of him. And everyone told him to shove it. But he even yelled at me to stay and reschedule all the meetings for the rest of the day. I sat down and did that. And I did one of them, and then, as everyone's freaking out around me, I told him what he could do with the rest of the schedule, and I left. About 10 minutes after the rest of the office had. It was amazing. Floods of people running down the stairs. You were shoulder to shoulder with people. There was already gridlock by the Capitol. It was a mass exodus, and those are the best words to describe how crazy it was. It was only a few minutes later when I was in my car that they announced that there was a car bomb in front of the State Department. and they made a mandatory evacuation of the Hill office buildings. I headed for home with my coworker. I lived exactly 10 blocks from the Capitol. So the phone lines were all jammed and traffic was miserable, but that wasn't as bad as it was going to be. It was bumper to bumper, and as the evening wore on and they declared DC in a state of emergency, it became eerily quiet. And all that interrupted that later was the sound of helicopters that were flying over. It was really weird. Everyone was inside, and I'm not sure that I moved from the TV all day. My boyfriend works in the Senate. That's Bill, who became my husband. And I had called him to tell him to get the hell out of there. And he's very stubborn, and I could just picture him standing on the side of the building and watching all the people running for their lives. On my way home, I heard there was an explosion on the Senate side and started to get a little hysterical. Tears, but not too crazy yet, because I couldn't get in touch with him. There was so much misinformation that day. We were, like, there was a bomb at the State Department. There was a bomb. We didn't know. And the sonic boom was really what we had heard, that they thought was the bomb at the State Department. But it was the sonic boom from the Pentagon being hit. I couldn't get in touch with him. When I got to my house, Mama called again. I had already spoken with her 10 times at this point. Man, she really knows how to get through some phone lines. Still knows how to do that. She said that Mary Pat said the Intelligence Committee was telling people to get off of the Hill. I mean, you're sitting next to the Supreme Court, the Senate, the House office buildings, and the Capitol. We had been in session the night before, so all the senators and congressmen were here. If I were a terrorist, I would think that was where I would hit if I could. So my coworker and I jumped in the car and we headed to Baltimore. By this time, I was a wreck. All you know is that someone may be headed for your city and you don't know where to go or what to do. Where are they going to hit? Where is a safe place to be? I just wanted to stay in my apartment and cry. I had no idea where Bill was, and I wasn't sure what had happened at the Senate. I still thought a bomb had blown there. But I knew that they had gotten all the leaders out of there, and that is never a good sign. We got halfway to Baltimore, and Bill called and told me to come back. He pointed out that the DC was probably the safest place to be, with no flight zone already in effect, and even more strictly enforced during this time. I believe his actual words were more like, I believe you're overreacting, dear. All of the hits that are going to happen they've lost the element of surprise. Come back. It's better to be here than anywhere else. Calm down. He never changed with that. If you think about it, that's correct. On a daily basis, nothing is allowed to fly above the city under penalty of being shot down. And I imagine that this is even more strict after the hit on the Pentagon. And I was right. They weren't even using helicopters to fly the wounded out of the Pentagon. It's almost comforting to picture yourself in the middle of a city that's surrounded by people with guns, keeping others out. So my friend and I turned around. I still to this day have no idea where I was. I drove somewhere. I left. I was headed towards Baltimore. I have no idea where I got. It's a blur. Anyway, the interstate out of the city was bumper to bumper, and the only bridge out of the city was the one that we were on. So everybody that was leaving was on that same bridge. An hour after we got back into the city, they closed all inbound lanes. So we were lucky to get back. And I'm so glad Bill convinced me to come back, because I would have been out of the city for weeks. Nobody was coming back in. So we went over to Bill's house and holed up there for a while. And I have to laugh about this. Because I'm a Southern woman, I didn't know what to do. And all these people were at Bill's house. So I stopped by my house and got like some frozen casseroles to feed everybody. It was like, well, when all else fails, feed people, right? So I have to tell you, it was very surreal, and it still feels that way. Keep in mind, this is 24 hours later. They kept saying that on TV, and even that was surreal. Someone hit America. Someone hit my house. Watching them deal with the wreckage as they pulled people out of the Pentagon was like watching something happen in another country. People running out of the Capitol and office buildings in suits and ties, briefcases and high heels looked like out of a movie. The Pentagon is less than 1 mile away from where I work and live. Even more chilling is the reports from people calling on their cell phones from the hijacked planes. I know you have heard about the famous woman and reporter that called her husband a couple of times to report the hijacking and deliver some messages, and the other man that locked himself in the bathroom of the plane that went down in Pennsylvania and called 911 saying they were going to try to do something. Another person's reported that her son called from an airphone on that same plane and said they had knives and said they had guns. The last fact is the one that scares me the most. One phone call reports that one person said, "They keep saying the Capitol, they keep saying the Capitol," and that's the plane that went down in the rural field. Sorry. Bill's brother is a United pilot, and they couldn't find him yesterday. He flies to California, so they were a little worried. Bill rarely ever worries, but he was worried now. And when he finally talked to him, he said that number one, there was no way that those hijackers had been trained on little planes. They were experienced pilots to be able to go in at the angles that they did. And number two, he thinks that the pilots ditched the plane in Pennsylvania. He knows the pilot and said that is something he would have done after hearing the reports on the radio, and especially if they were talking about the Capitol, because no pilot would fly a plane into a building. He would have to be killed first. They didn't check, number three, and I always think this is important, they didn't check people as they got off the planes. So he thinks that there could feasibly have been more people that didn't get up in time. I know the reports are that the plane was headed for Camp David, but I don't believe it. They hit the financial world, the military, and the logistical thing would be to hit the political world next. And if the people knew all that they did to do this, they knew that the president was going to be in Florida. It would have hit us harder to hit in the seat of power. And it scares the hell out of me. And if I really sit and think about it, it makes me cry. I mean, terrorists would have been headed for me. I really can't grasp it. And now I look back on this and I know the people on that airplane and what they did to save my life. And that's why I got a little teary a minute ago. If those people in Pennsylvania hadn't done what they did, I don't think I would be here today. We were watching the stuff last night at the Capitol, and they were announcing the congressional leaders coming in on helicopters. I could hear them flying overhead, and they were flying in huge groups so no one could tell who was who. You could feel the vibrating of the huge machine, and it shook you to the bones. It kind of felt like it was really close to me, and then it stopped being so surreal. And then the 5 different decoys for the president flew over my house, all over my house, and it hit me. But unless there are moments of clarity like that, I really do feel like I'm on some sort of Hollywood movie set. Nothing is really real. I haven't been to the Pentagon yet, tried to stay away and let rescue workers do what they can, but I think that seeing that will make me cry again. I've cried a lot, and I'm not very good at remembering the order of events. It doesn't feel like it happened here. I fell asleep at 9:45 last night. I thought I was going to be awake throughout the night, but your system takes over, I guess, and it was earlier than I usually go to bed by about 3 hours. I felt like I'd been fighting in a war. It's amazing, though. There are hundreds of people going out and giving blood. My cousin just started college and said that she and her friends went to give blood and they had to wait 5 hours. It's really touching to me that 5 hours worth of college kids went down to the Red Cross and stayed until they could donate. There are relief efforts all over the country that people are working on, and to tell you the truth, we are really seeing a huge surge of patriotism here in DC, and a lot of nobody is going to try and mess with my country up here. Is it the same where you are? Instead of being dragged down, people are waving flags and standing strong? Are there candlelight vigils all over your city like mine? The sad thing, and I guess a sign that things really are going to change, is that the police are not letting large groups assemble. Some of the vigils have been called off. But I know I'm going to go buy an American flag, and I'm going to tie a red, white, and blue ribbon to my antenna like people are already doing up here. I feel sure that the motivation is going to continue to be fueled by what we are seeing and hearing as time passes. There are accounts of a man from Mobile talking with his brother while trapped in the World Trade Center and telling him to take care of his wife and children because he knows he's not going to get out, and the phone cutting out as the building collapsed under his feet, and images of people throwing themselves out of the top floors rather than burning to death. You see babies covered in soot and people peeling the bloodied clothes off of one another in the streets. It's like something you would see in the Middle East, and it's only hours north of here and just minutes south. The people in the Pentagon were people that were in the Congressional Liaison Office. So people that I worked with every day. And that other plane that was headed here, it was headed here. It's just too much to think about. I miss you all so much, and I'm very lucky to have you love me and worry about me. I'm fine, but please do keep the people that are not in your prayers. I'm not afraid up here, and you shouldn't be where you are. That is what they want us to be. We are a strong country and a determined group, and we will come out of this on top. Don't be scared, and don't let it affect you. I miss you. Please keep in touch. I will try to update you from here the more I know. Sorry for the mass email, but I've received so many calls and emails, I cannot possibly answer them all individually. Thank you so much for caring about me. I miss you all. Stella. So, like I said, I was 22 when I wrote that. And I think about all the things in my life that are here and possible because of what strong people did for me and for the other people on the Hill. And I never want anybody to forget that. I never want anybody to forget what happened to us all that day. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to still be here. I'm grateful for my life and my children. I'm grateful for being alive. I mean, we're all so lucky. We're all so lucky. We're all here. And so don't forget, and don't let this just be something you barely remember. Try to find what you wrote that day. Try to remember what it was like for you. I just remember when, what was his name? David Letterman came back on TV and told a joke, and it was like 2 weeks later, and we laughed, and we looked around and thought, is it okay to laugh again? I wish people could remember that we didn't even want to laugh. Thank you, and please never forget.